to Season 4 of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. My name is Hoda, and our guest today on Hoda's Career Info is Wayne Pagani.
My board of directors are typically people who I know and I've engaged in with their services, but I also have people in my network that I haven't engaged in their services. It empowers the clients that we work with. They can make their decisions as they go along. It's not us, influencing. You take care of you and you're accountable to you. If you have a dream or a goal or an aspiration or a problem that you want to resolve, we are going to support you.
Thank you so much for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. Watch, listen, and learn. And remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. More importantly, be sure to have that very important career conversation with a career professional. As a career development professional, our guest today, Wayne Pagani, has over 25 years of coaching experience serving people with diverse backgrounds internationally. Wayne has assisted over 1,000 clients with career or life objectives to develop effective action plans in order to achieve their life aspirations and career goals. This experience is combined with over 14 years of business experience in the transportation industry, where Wayne was responsible for managing operations and maximizing employee engagement. In addition, Wayne brings over 10 years of counseling experience working with clients in residential facilities to foster personal growth. And that's not all. Wayne also facilitates inspirational workshops and services to clients seeking solutions in all sectors of business and community. He has delivered customized train-the-trainer programs for career or employment service organizations. He offers a holistic perspective and approach to supporting people, empowers them by providing resources and connection to others to help them realize and fulfill their career or life aspirations. This is not Wayne's first time interviewing on Hoda's Career Info. If you would like to know more about his work and his background, be sure to look up the earlier episode of my interview with Wayne Pagani. Today's interview with Wayne focuses on one term in our effort to increase career literacy about the terms that career professionals use in the industry. So thank you so much for joining me and Wayne Pagani, and stay tuned as Wayne introduces us to the term circle of support. Thank you, Wayne Pagani, for joining me again in Hoda's Career Info. I really appreciate your time. And in today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit different in that we're going to be focusing on one concept. The concept is the circle of support concept in career development, or as you would like to call it, and as you taught me to call it, the board of directors. With that concept in mind, I'm going to read a premise that you shared with me and that we hope to build today's episode on. The premise is that every client has a unique set of needs, and by introducing the idea of a holistic support system, we provide our clients with access to information, resources, and assistance in other aspects of their lives and careers in order to make more balanced and informed decisions about the way forward. Does that sound like a good premise? Is that what you had in mind?
I think that's a good intro and good segue, I think, into starting. Yeah, absolutely.
Wayne, my first question to you is what is meant by a circle of support for our clients?
Yeah, so it's not a new concept. Circle of support has been around for a while. In fact, it comes from, I think, other disciplines, other practices that are working with people or providing services to support people. In fact, I'm going to read a definition from the National Disability Insurance Scheme in Australia that defines the term as follows. A circle of support is formed by a group of people who regularly meet with you and assist with the thinking, planning, and implementation of your personal goals. Your circle provides a great opportunity to develop relationships and discuss your hopes and dreams. With you at the center, your circle makes the decisions with you by listening to your ideas, supporting your choices, identifying your goals, and planning to make things happen, particularly if you're looking at some kind of change. In some ways, I think all of us as career development professionals do this in the collaborative partnerships that we have with other services and professionals. I think we do it sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, and it's just a part of the process as we identify the needs that our clients have. I think the difference becomes that we do it intentionally by starting to set up a framework of looking at how can I incorporate a circle of support in my practice that will allow me to introduce clients to it in an easier way. So I have a bit of, I think, a take on it based on my personal experience. And one of them has to do with the CRG model that I'll ask you to just put up on the screen that'll help illustrate that holistic piece that you talked about in the opening premise. So it's been my experience that clients come to us, obviously predominantly for career, employment, job related needs for the most part. But as we get to know them, we hear, and as we establish more rapport and they start feeling safe, I think, in starting to tell their whole stories, we start hearing way more than just the employment career development needs. And as human beings, we are holistic, which is why I really appreciated the CRG personality development factors model that you see here on the screen when it was first introduced to me by Dr. Ken Keyes. Not only does this framework, I think, help to identify possible needs to assess clients for which the CRG model provides a variety of different tools, and we won't go into that necessarily today, but they're one way that I incorporate it in my practice. But it's also a reflection of responding to those holistic needs that our clients have, which can include the concept of a circle of support. And so we may be hearing things about self-worth and self-esteem, or maybe there's physical, either physical or biophysical influences that can be physical or mental health issues potentially. It's things that are unique about that individual from a personal style perspective. Environmental systems in terms of that whole nature nurture model of where people are in their different environments of workplace, schooling, and other factors, some of which you may hear in some of the examples that I share. And then who are our social teachers and influencers, and what impact has that had on us in terms of where we are today? And the emotional anchors, which are constantly ebbing and flowing. And again, I think when I first talked to Ken about his approach to some of the tools and the frameworks that they work with, and then I saw this illustration at one of his workshops, and it really spoke to me from the standpoint of that whole person that you see at the in the middle here of this graphic, and how we're influenced by internal and external factors. Well, the truth is also that we can manage those influencers to a certain degree, and part of that has to do with the people that we surround ourselves with and the systems that and services that we can reach out to in order to get the support that we need when we need them. As career development practitioners, I think we have the opportunity to also help educate our clients on how to develop those systems in terms of a circle of support. So I'll just share some examples, and so you can close the model, but you're more than welcome to leave it up here, Hoda, whichever you think is best. I first heard about the concept of a circle of support as a part of a case management team. So in the mid 1990s, when I was working with people that were exiting the correctional system. And it really resonated with me, and I've kind of bookmarked a few things over the years, and as well getting ready for our conversation today, of recognizing that Canada actually established its own circle of support and accountability, which was part of a national capacity project that ultimately was, I think in 2017, there was about $8 million that was invested by the federal government to help address the needs of particularly those from a national crime prevention strategy here in Canada. And COSA became sort of the acronym for the group. Is a Canadian made community-based program, and it's recognized internationally today for its effectiveness at lowering rates of recidivism, reoffending, and preventing victimization. And so if it works in that capacity, from my perspective, it can work in many others. And so we see this already, I think, in so many other different ways that, and how we incorporate in terms of the work that we do with the clients that we're serving. So back then, so 1996 is when I was first asked to start a return to work project for people that were exiting the correctional system to help them reintegrate. And at the time, I decided that I would adopt this because I thought if we can do it with one person, maybe we can do it in group work as well. And so I started back then to make it a part of the 7-day workshop that I was delivering in that reintegration process. And I would invite guest speakers in through the 7 days from all kinds of different services. And sometimes what I would try to look for was in my intake. So we did an initial interview at the front end of the workshop with people, and I would listen for what some of the varying needs are, or what at least was a theme within the group. And based on that, I would start reaching out to my network. And in the process of doing that, asking people if they would be willing to come in at a pre-scheduled date. And if that worked for them, then they would come in and they would talk about the services, and more specifically, how people might find solutions to problems that they were having in that regard. And I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about what some of those types of support might include. And then at the very end, in fact, what we would do is, I may have shared this with you actually the first time that we spoke, just because of my that power of networking and community that I feel is so important in terms of what we do. But what we would do is we would jump in a van, and I would actually take them to some of the services, some of which had already presented and others that had not, in order for the people that were participating in the workshop to meet live bodies, to meet the staff of some of these services, whether they were private or community-based, so that they now had a go-to person. And sometimes that really resonated for people. Like, I would hear back from them in the follow-up or in the aftercare portion of the program at, so-and-so at this, that, we met that day, is now my caseworker, or, is the one that opened the door, or ultimately led to the opportunity I needed in my first job, back out on the streets. All those kinds of things. I get goosebumps whenever I think back to that, simply because of how effective I think it is that, you've heard the expression of it takes a community to raise a child. Well, I think it doesn't end there. I think it continues as we continue to watch people evolve in their careers and their lives, and they knock on our doors for one specific aspect of that life. But as that model that we just illustrated would indicate, it is, there's a much more holistic need. And I think in my private practice today, I've incorporated it as well. I intentionally try to build my network on a regular basis of what I'm hearing are some of the needs. Obviously, the pandemic started to shift some of those needs. And then based on that, for me, the real foundation of a circle of support comes from a variety of things. So I've worked in a community center in employment-based services for about 6 years here in the Ottawa region. And there it was almost a given, right? It was organically part and parcel of working in that environment, because we had so many internal referral opportunities with a variety of different services, from family and child services to health and legal and even financial services, that we could walk across the hall and potentially be asking, what we could do to help a client. So to me, at the end of the day, Hoda, it's really community at large, right? So that our clients can then either have access to a resource which might start with us, or even better is we're educating them how to create their own circle of support.
I love how you shared the potential benefits and you gave me some examples of that. And I do believe in the value of the circle of support. I know you've been really supporting me from when we first met a few years ago now. How would one who is just starting out and thinking about the idea of the circle of support, how would one create their own circle of support?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it also, some of this really comes back to our own personal style, right? In terms of what we're comfortable with, where does it fit into our practice? I'm currently mentoring two very different people, one of whom was taking a sabbatical because she has a child on the way, and her approach is somewhat more not hands off, but really more of an independent solo practice. Networking's definitely part, and it's what she reached out to me to ask about the mentorship relationship. The other is way more proactive with creating these collaborative resources for her clients. And in fact, one of the things that she and I talked about in one of our latest mentoring conversations was the idea of a job search club, right? And it seems to have faded away, the concept of job search clubs. So as career development practitioners, I think that if somebody is new to the field or is maybe been in the field for a while, but is now thinking, yeah, this is something I've kind of done, but I want to do it more intentionally. The first place I would start with is just listening to the patterns in the needs of the clients that you're serving, because different demographics potentially may have different needs. Where your location is in the country may be a little bit different. Maybe as well the needs of some of the people that are coming to you that come from other places that are very, very different. So, listening to what are those needs. And we're also becoming more socially justice, I think, conscious than ever before. So to also be cognizant of this, right, in how we engage with clients. My wife and I have been talking about, trauma informed, right, and maybe just knowing that I may not be the expert in trauma informed. In fact, I would suggest that I'm probably learning as we go, and that maybe I need to have someone who can help not only educate me, but educate clients who may, need that as a potential area to be addressed or to develop. So as a career development practitioner, I think it's about just listening to what are the needs of the client, creating a bit of a list of what those needs are, and then where are the services and professionals and resources, either locally or online, preferably locally, where you can introduce people to people and create a fresh referral list of people that you want to get to know. Now, you may not necessarily use their services. I'll give you couple of examples of folks that I've worked with as you called earlier, my board of directors, right? Some of whom my board of directors are typically people who I know and I've engaged in with their services, but I also have people in my network that I haven't engaged in their services. And so most recently I had an example of a client who I had worked with back in the days where I worked in the practice room that you've heard me talk about. So we're talking about mid 2000s, community-based services at the time, and he came on as later on in his career as an independent client with me under WP Consulting and Associates. All went well, secured a job. He worked in technology, really a great kind of client who really takes what you give them and runs with it, right? And had a lot of success, I think, in ultimately developing his career. But more recently, unfortunately, his mom's health wasn't great, and during the pandemic, of course, it took its toll. And they decided that they would like to get back to their country of origin so that she could at least see her family and friends before she eventually passes. And it's her intent to stay there and live there. It was his intent to get her there, stay there, and then make a decision as to what he would do. The roadblock that he had, though, in getting there, when he reached out to me, so he wasn't calling me this time for my services as much as just to say, I know, I've turned to you before. I'm not sure I feel safe sharing this with anyone else, but we're stuck because we can't sell the house. And he says, we've tried real estate agents. We've tried selling it on our own. We've tried all these online things. Nothing's worked. It's been over a year, and we're kind of stuck here until we can make the sale of the home happen. And there weren't enough resources either at the country of origin or here for him to be able to afford to make the move with his mom, who wouldn't be able to function on her own, especially for travel. He would need to be with her. So I reached out to this one lady who is just over the years, Hoda. I met her at a networking event back, maybe the early 2000s. It was called Your Stage, and professionals, both in terms of private practice or independent practitioners, as well as private and government businesses, would all meet and network, and it was an opportunity to develop your voice, and a lot of those people have become a part of my resource network. And one of them was a real estate agent who, over the years, I've never used her services, but has always stayed in touch with me. And I don't know how many people that I have referred to this individual, and the majority of which have never been income generating for her, but took the time and in a very busy schedule to meet these people and address some of the needs that they have and help them. Well, I reached out to her, and 2 months later, I got an email from him saying that he had met with her, and her team had helped sell the house at a very affordable price for him, but more importantly, that they got a good dollar for their sale, and he was able to make the move. And so he wanted to take me out to lunch. So about 3 weeks ago, they were leaving that week. He took me out for lunch and explained the whole story of what had happened and how everything unfolded and how grateful he was. So I had very little to do with that, other than remembering that in that circle of support that I have, both for myself but accessible to my clients, was someone who I think shares the same values that I have in terms of helping people. And that was a word that he used. Actually, he actually said that, he, right from the get-go, he trusted her because of the values that she demonstrated all the way through the entire process.
That's a great example. And I appreciate you showed us how it can, it doesn't have to happen right away. It could take time, but then that circle of support will come in handy at a certain point.
Yeah, and I think that it offers, it empowers the clients that we work with. They can make their decisions as they go along. It's not us, influencing, but I think it's them remembering that there's an open door for them to come back and either check in with us as career practitioners, or to develop that network. And then over time, they become the contributors. Maybe that's in a volunteer role. Like we talk all the time from a career or a job search perspective, maybe volunteering is a good idea so that you get yourself engaged in a community, especially for those that are new to a particular area. And I think that that circle just kind of evolves because now they're the ones that are guiding others to develop their own circles of support by being contributors to something that was not necessarily expected when they first started.
That sounds great. And developing that trust, I guess, with the clients, that we are there to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mentioned earlier how, as people feel a little bit more comfortable and start sharing more and more of their history and their stories, and we hear, just how rich those experiences are with so many other aspects of life, that sometimes it's not about them having a need. Sometimes it's just us learning from the experience that they're sharing with us. And I would say that, part of I think the privilege that we have as career development practitioners is we get to hear those stories and sometimes remember solutions that work for other people that potentially can work for clients who are currently faced with the same barriers.
Absolutely. Wayne, as we think of the holistic support system, are there any specific models that might be useful in a career transition or during job search for clients?
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier the job finding clubs being one where people can reach out. I had mentioned at the onset the definition from Australia, which was predominantly working with services who were serving people that were living with disabilities. The correctional model is another one, but sometimes the names that we call these models are different. So mastermind groups are, often something that people are hearing of or are familiar with. And I've been part of mastermind groups where people have the opportunity to go in. And there's two things that I think circles of support provide, which they were originally intended to, even in their both basic models. The first one is obviously support. So you have a dream or a goal or an aspiration or a problem that you want to resolve. we are going to support you, right? We support you. We believe that for you, so that the skepticism or critical feedback that we may be hearing from even people that are close to us, family and friends, even if it's unintentional, is not there. It can also be the opportunity to play devil's advocate, though, so that we're kind of seeing the flip side of things that maybe we're oblivious to and we're not aware of in terms of the roadblocks that may get in our way along the way. The second part of it is accountability, because then it, there's that expression of, it's one thing to have, it's one of the reasons why often New Year's resolutions start but never finish, because we, on the night of, when the clock turns, everybody's on board and it's super excited, but there's no continuity because there's nobody holding us accountable. And it's one of the reasons why I think, a lot of models that have to do with fitness programs and, other models that work with support groups, for example, 12-step groups, I think why they're so effective is that there is an accountability factor, is that yes, you're, at the end of the day, you take care of you and you're accountable to you. There's something about saying it out loud. There's something about putting it out there that ultimately we end up holding ourselves accountable to, feeling that we've kind of made a commitment or a promise. And more importantly is that a really effective circle of support are people who are not holding you to the fire to get it done. That's not the intent. In fact, if things don't go the way that they were maybe intended, which can happen with life, those are the people that are going to help us to be there to pick up the pieces so that we can stay on track and keep on going. So those would be a couple, I think. Hoda, social media is loaded with all kinds of opportunities today. I like the in-person contact, yet we live in a digital age where a lot of what we're talking about can be available. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and all of them, when you look at the LinkedIn groups, right? I mean, that whole concept is, to me, a circle of support. You're, as a professional, you asked earlier about, if somebody in the career development field were looking at, well, how do I create a circle of support? Well, look at our career associations. I mean, there's a number of them here in Canada that do such great work. For me, as you know, the Career Professionals of Canada is undoubtedly impacted the success that I've had in this field, and I'm to this day grateful not only to CPC but to the members of CPC who have been available almost at a beckoning call whenever I've needed them, either in my business or, more importantly, when I've had to reach out to get resources and information to support my clients. And they do two things that people that are working in the field may find of interest. One is a course in work-life strategy. And it talks about really a lot of what we're talking about, because it looks at holistically what are the needs of the clients that we work with, and what are the various models that are available in terms of how we can incorporate those in our practice. And then the second is the extension of that, which is a certification. So the work-life strategist certification, to be recognized in doing this kind of work that I think goes hand in hand with helping people to create circles of support so that they can be more effective in achieving whatever it is that they're trying to achieve with their objectives.
And I know personally that you do practice what you're sharing right now, because you have introduced me to so many people that have helped me to grow this program, Hoda's Career Info, but also in my business. You're not just saying what you're saying, you actually live it and breathe it. These are all the questions I had ready for you, Wayne. Was there anything else you would like to add, that probably to build on this? How can we become stronger, perhaps as a whole group across Canada?
Yeah, so to your point, my tagline came from the community. I think I told you that story, right? It wasn't me that created the tagline of connecting people with people, resources, and opportunities. But that model, when I think back to the first time somebody said it, was when I was working in community-based services. I was working with the Vanier Community Service Center at the time, and I was the operations manager for the practice firm, so in that virtual environment. And one of the coordinators for the program was telling one of the clients, or a job seeker, that, oh, the person you need to talk to is Wayne, because he connects people with people, resources, and opportunities, or something along those lines. And it kind of stuck with me over the years because I feel so strongly about everything we do. You're right, is that anyone that I'm associated with or connected to, if there's a need and I can help and within my own capacity, if I'm able to, it just becomes second nature for my wife and I. Actually, Carol's probably even better at this than I am, to help connect the dots. And she's got a plethora of like all kinds of resource people and contacts, and it's like she's got this imaginary filing cabinet where she's able to store everything and then remembers as she's going through her day to day to help people in whatever way she can in that capacity by connecting them to the people who really can help them, right? And I don't know if I'm really answering your question as much as simply to say that, think about it for those of us that have worked in case management teams, that, in the case management team, so I work right now currently as part of one of my contracts in a psychosocial case management team where, we have part of the team that are connecting people with the psychological needs that they have and other types of needs. So that might be family, that might be learning and education. So do we have psychologists that can perform the assessments that we need in order to assess learning disabilities and other factors? Do we have people who can identify literacy needs in order to bridge the gap to education? Do we have, somebody who can help people learn how to budget and manage those finances, particularly in a time where we're hearing more and more, unfortunately, where families are having to attend food banks just because of the cost of living and what inflation has done for those that don't have the means to make ends meet. So I think when we think about it from a case management perspective, there are times where with different practitioners, I will collaborate and that becomes part of a case management process. And in other times it's a referral. So I mentioned earlier, the idea of a niche market or demographic. So I had one client who was here as a refugee and had education, wanted to pursue a higher education, had started the process at Algonquin in terms of her English second language, but couldn't get past a certain barrier of ultimately being able to complete that process. So I asked if she would be okay, and she signed a consent of disclosure for me to contact the school. And I spoke with the student career services program, and one of the individuals at the Algonquin Career Services here in Ottawa agreed to do the consultation with both of us. So there was no confidential information. It was all simply explaining their process. And then after we were done, she asked if I could participate in the beginning of that process of him coaching and counseling her. And he said, absolutely, provided that I get a consent of disclosure from you. And he was instrumental in getting her back into school. All I did was open the door, right? And so that's where I think that's the opportunity that we have working with some of our clients, and not just those clients that are in entry level or professional, moving into more midstream careers. I'm talking about executives as well that I work with who often reach back out to me after the fact simply because they want to stay connected to other things that are going on for them, and they know that my network is strong, that they don't feel inhibited about reaching back out to me in order to do so.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for these inspiring stories and for taking the time to really detail the circle of support concept on Hoda's Career Info.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me today, Hoda.
This is it for Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. Our guest today on Hoda's Career Info was Wayne Pagani. You can connect with Wayne on LinkedIn. Wayne's term was Circle of Support. Take the time to pause, re-listen to the definition of the term, and let us know how you grow your circle of support. Remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Please like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda. Until next time, remember, your time is valuable. How are you spending it?